Good morning, everyone. The Select Board's call to order December 27th, 2024 at 9 a.m. Before we move on, I'd like to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Recording in progress.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, John, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, good enough. Approve the December 12th, 2024 Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Public forum, this is an opportunity for anyone who wants.
We need to vote.
Vote Allen.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, back up. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Three, and John?
Aye.
Okay, yep. Public forum, this is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Is there any hands up?
There is no one else on.
Okay,
Just John.
okay. John, you had your hands up?
I did. They're not up.
Okay. 4, discussion of waste tipping contract. I think Eric is going to give us a little heads up on this. And Nina, you're going to help him? Or? Okay.
Yeah, so, Lori had an unexpected.
Can you?
Oh, yeah. No, can you hear? Okay. Yeah, so Lori was not able to get here today. She had a nice surprise, so she's with her daughter right now and spending some time with her. So we'd met with the regional communities on waste hauling and try to get a general sense of the direction that the regional county towns really want to be moving in. It appears that the majority of them are likely to be moving towards an Echo Main kind of disposal, a contract, and they would like to, and the contract was opened up by Echo Main as well to allow for these communities to join in at a cost. So what we're asking for the board right now is to really to begin to review the spreadsheets. Lori put a spreadsheet together basically laying out the individual costs between Waste Management, Casella, and going to Echo Main, as opposed to currently our current situation right now is we have a recycling contract with Casella. We're supposed to have a 5-year contract. However, solid waste is up for renewal. And am I saying that correctly? I believe it. So and the difference is that typically Casella would take it to their own recycling facility, transfer there, and then take it to their landfill or dispose of it, or however they would manage that. It's their tipping cost, so they manage that. If we were to go to Echo Main, there is an added cost for trucking associated with that because there's a longer distance for them to haul. They are willing to do that for both recycling because it doesn't make sense for them to take recycling to Wells and then take solid waste to Echo Main. So they're willing to take all of those products to Echo Main at a new assessed cost for the hauling. And then, of course, the tipping fee would be with Echo Main as opposed to Casella. So so Lori has placed those numbers together as well as the buy-in cost for the 25-year contract to buy into Echo Main, and put those numbers together. And that is in that larger spreadsheet that you folks should have. And it shows you the individual costs. And of course, these are apples to apples. There are some COLA increase, I should say, yearly cost increases and such in those numbers. But I would just, at this point, I think I would just ask you to kind of, I know there's a lot of information here to review it. All indication from our perspective, just financially, to be able to be an owner community in Echo Main and be able to, for lack of better terms, somewhat control costs moving forward, I think is what has been attractive to the other communities at this point.
So one of the questions I have, and as that it's gonna be a long contract. We've had a long contract before, and I think the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason for the long contract for this is because there's a few unknowns, which one is, these landfills are getting filled up. In this particular company, they burn most of their waste. That's correct, right?
Yes, yes. So, Echo Maine, that is an energy recovery situation where they will actually burn your solid waste, and then that is transferred over and transferred into energy. And at the same time, they have a zero, the sorting facility as well for the recycling. They both do.
Yeah. So I think, looking at all the figures and everything else, I'm leaning towards that myself.
Okay.
Mary Beth, you have any questions?
Oh, geez, let's think. So Eric, so this is a discussion about the recycling and waste.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just not a recycling thing. And I guess so Casella does it now, and what we're concerned about, from what I read, is the unknown in terms of a pass-through, an ongoing pass-through of whatever Casella's trucking
Yes.
costs might be.
There's language in there, it's also on the tipping fee as well, so, there's some, I don't want to use the word arbitrary per se, but it's language that allows for possible increases depending on regulatory mandates on, let's say it was on the landfill, for example, and what would happen in that particular case, if they were to take the landfill. Or any other environmental costs or other costs. So there's some caveats in the contract that allows Casella obviously to increase their costs.
And that's an unknown. There's no way of even fathoming how much it might be.
Right,
That's what's scary about the whole thing.
Well, the other thing is it's an unknown within a budget cycle, from what I read. It's a cost that can hit you quickly. It's not like it's a year away.
yes,
So it's outside of our fiscal,
And
if I
also,
understood it.
Casella's ability to continue to take our waste after 5 years depends on whether the state approves that landfill. If they don't, we're gonna be right back here in a less advantageous bargaining position to look for a new tipping fee, a new place to dispose of the waste. So that's
And-
also a very big unknown with Casella.
Yeah, in 5 years, it's such a short amount of time.
And a tipping fee, could you just define that?
tipping fee is so there are two costs associated. There's the hauling fee, which is basically the picking up of it, and then there's the tonnage of the actual waste that we would be generating. So the tipping fee is based on tons of waste product or municipal solid waste that we would be.
It's a disposal of the waste.
The actual dumping of.
Right, right. So it's the weight on the truck. So there's the trucking, which is one cost, and then there's the tipping fee, which is the disposal based on tonnage that we produce.
Okay. And I think what I didn't really see in this is, the definition of the contract with Echo Maine. So if it's so on Alan's point, it's nice to have a long-term contract. On the other point, though, I'd like to understand what contract we're getting in. I know we get a seat on the board, but I didn't want to get in a situation, and I'm not saying this is a situation like this, but it was unclear, like what this board and what cost sharing would be across the different towns or the people that accept it. So for example, if Echo Maine had to build something new, does the cost get shared across every town, even though we have a much lower tonnage and we're back to the school, thing? And also with any contract, I'd like to understand, what is our mechanisms to break on both sides?
Sure.
So what is their mechanism to get us, break this community, and what's our mechanism if there's some unforeseen thing that we need to change?
Yeah. So it's an excellent question. Obviously, any infrastructure is going to require some upgrades and such, and there could be permitting environmental requirements on that particular facility. So that's a great question. It's a question we're scheduling time right now with Kevin Roach, which is the general manager at Echo Maine, to have those discussions. We're scheduling those for sometime in early January, around the 6th to the 10th, about that time. So we're hoping to sit down with him and kind of at least get a little more understanding around that. As it relates to communities leaving Echo Maine, as I understand, having spoke with the other regional communities, is that it's only been done once by one community. And in that particular community had a solid waste hauler that was very, very competitive. And ironically, that community, so they left Echo Maine, and ironically, that company ultimately was bought out by one of their competitors, which, most everybody seems to be pretty happy with Echo Maine. I know that, that's. So
Yeah, I
that's
think
it.
I would just like to understand our legal capabilities to break a contract on both their side and our side. I think the things that scare me is like when we, not scare me, but are the unknowns. So Casella's right up front in terms of saying to us, look you might run into some costs, unforeseen costs, and they're just gonna be a pass-through because we can't, we don't have, I'm just talking as if I'm Casella, we don't have the land, latitude to take it in our profits, so we're just gonna pass it on to our customers. Now, is Echo Maine in the same thing, but they're just not stating it, meaning that they are gonna have to build a facility, they're gonna get hit by the same requirements down the road. I just wanna understand if we're in it and we've got, and we're a small fish in a big garbage pond, do we share equally, or is it always based on tonnage? That's, if we're gonna be part of this community, we have to know how we're gonna get billed.
Yep, absolutely, those are questions for Kevin. I mean, I think that we just need to speak with him about that. I trust, and I would trust moving forward that we would be treated equally as all the other member communities, even while we're buying in to so I would like to think that everyone has the same common interest to keep our costs down. It's in everybody's best interest,
But
obviously.
when you get into a cost-sharing situation, that's what I want to understand. I
Yeah.
don't want to replicate this, the current issues we have with the school contract, right? I don't want to be, if paying for somebody else. I don't want our town residents to be paying for somebody else's share
Yep.
if we're the lowest amount of tonnage showing up. And the last thing I'll ask is, Casella had this thing that I thought was very interesting, the reduction part. That little device that they sell that basically dries out your waste,
Yep.
your vegetable waste, your food waste.
Yep.
And I don't know if Echo Maine has something like that, because that's part of the reduction part that we never talk about in terms of tonnage and waste.
So Echo Maine does have a food recycling, a composting kind of operation, if you will. I'm not sure, I mean, once again, those are probably questions, if that's a program we wanted to start in town, of course, that's a separate pickup, right? So,
Well, I didn't know if this is something that, actually our town could do ourselves.
yeah, I would tell you anything could be done, certainly. It does require a separate hauling, but I know Echo Maine does that as well. So I think, but that's the processing piece, and I know they do food processing, food waste processing. I haven't delved into that aspect, but if that's something we want to research.
I don't think it's something we want to do for this contract because it's in January, but it would be interesting to understand, maybe within our town itself at some point, what options do we have?
Sure. Yeah, the food to table is kind of a,
Well, it's to
Yeah,
reduce tonnage, right? So if we can, when I was reading Casella's numbers for every 100 people that participated, it seemed like the tonnage reduction was, I would say, significant without knowing our overall tonnage. Like, what do you happen to know off the top of your head? And I apologize for asking, but what type of tonnage do we deal with on an annual?
well, actually, I have to look through here.
2,400 pounds, what it is,
24.
yeah, 2,400 tons.
It may be, I don't want to go
Okay,
off the
yeah,
top of my
so
head.
roughly right,
I don't want to
roughly in
mislead
that
you.
ballpark,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are other programs out there that, just to say that and Echo Maine does the recycling, does the solid waste, and also does the food recycling as well. So, at their operation, but once again, Casella becomes basically a hauler, if you will, or transportation vehicle for us at this point. They're no longer taking care of our product, they're just taking it there for us.
So they would pick it up in the trucks and haul it to Portland
Yep,
facility. We would pay Casella to pick it up, that's a whole separate contract we already have, but then do we get charged to transportation fee from here to Portland for all our tons, and then Echo Main would then put their tipping fee on to actually dump it?
Yes, yep. So they would be weighed on the way in.
Yep.
And based on that weight would be the tipping fee at Echo Main's end.
Yep.
And then there'd be a transportation cost for Casella.
And Casella, so my only other questions, a couple of questions are, 30 years, is it not opposed to a 30-year? You said 25, or was it 30? I thought
25.
25, okay.
Kennebunk is doing a 30.
Oh, 30, okay, so 25 makes sense because it kind of locks it in, but questions would be on Mary Beth's line. What happens if there's some issue 5 or 10 years from now on their end or our end? How would we get in or out? The ownership piece, which I find interesting, and do we end up with potential liability for the town? If something came up,
That's a good one.
5 or 10 years, some regulation comes in and there's something found in their waste facility, right? Like a PFAS or something, and all of a sudden, the owners, which would have been Casella if we'd stuck with, or Waste Management, because it's their facility, are we then part of one of the owners that have to deal with it?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think that's where insurance must be involved.
I mean, they have their own landfill, so Echo Main has its own landfill.
Right, but wouldn't we kind of be an owner?
We would,
Right.
we would, absolutely. I think that's part of the whole process there, yes, they do. There's ash generated once the solid waste is burned. And so, and that ash is taken to an ash landfill that they have nearby.
So that's just my,
Is Kenny,
is there a question on the potential liability
Yeah,
as an
that's a good
owner
one.
of a landfill?
Yep.
yeah, that's a good one. Did Kennebunk, are they proposing the buy-in or the,
They appear to be going that way, but they're going to referendum, so they've asked 3 different questions on their referendum. So they have some options on there. I believe their desire is probably to go in that route, I think.
Eric, another question. So what we got from Echo, is this all based on all these towns that are listed here being part of the consortium, or does this start to change if some of these towns drop out?
That's a
you might
good
not have-
question. That is a Kevin question, I would say. I believe this is a kind of one-up, one time. This is your opportunity to buy in. We haven't
Yep.
allowed other communities to buy in, but now, and maybe it is, they've gotten to the point where their bonds have been paid off and now they're coming into a new phase. I think those communities that had bought in already got the benefits of the bonds being paid off and such, and now they're maybe in a phase where they want more, to be able to spread costs out to more communities. I mean, I suspect maybe that's probably their approach, I would say.
I think I think what you're hearing from David and myself is the same type of hesitant of entering into a contract where we're actually part owner. But that's a big step for the town, and, if we're the only gatekeepers for that decision, we have to really understand, what we're getting the town, what we're signing the town up for.
It is, there is a competitive advantage, obviously, on the tipping. If we look through these numbers, I mean, on the tipping side, being an owner actually is a more favorable tipping cost. So there's that. The one, and all I can do is go back to the historical information that has been provided to me, is that there was only one community that's left. And I believe that was pretty seamless. And I don't know what happened to, if they had equity into the Echo Main. I don't know how that all worked out because they had bought in.
But I think that's the thing, it's not so much if their program's been successful, but it's more in terms of what are we signing up for?
Sure.
And I think that's, so if you just said, okay, we just had to make a decision, based on a cost basis, that's one thing, but if you're saying now, where we have to make a decision, and also takes into account that the town is now going to become an ownership
Yep.
stake, then that brings, for me, that brings a whole different level of discussion in, of terms of really doing due diligence and understanding what we're signing up for the town, so.
And we'll have to get into those details, obviously. So, I mean, I think at this point, I think what Lori was really just asking to review these numbers, and does it make sense based on these numbers? And we will speak with Kevin Roach, which is the general manager at Echo Main, and then bring this back to you in January.
Yep.
And just maybe vet out some more questions at that point.
And MSW is you didn't really, so you're not looking to split the recycling or the solid waste?
It's just not practical. The new automated pickup that we'll be doing will be going basically where they have a split truck
one
in the
truck.
back.
Right.
So everything is, you know, as it is now, having to go to Portland may require us, it may alter our days of pickup. We may need to add an additional day of pickup. So those are all discussions we need to have, just because of the deadheading time, if you will, to drive to Portland and come back.
And our contract with Casella won't change if we have them, I don't know where they drive to now, but them driving to,
To Wells.
Well, so they drop.
That's what that extra fee is for. That extra Casella fee is the additional charge for the additional transportation.
So, because they're,
Spreadsheet.
because we are talking about split trucks here, the recycling and solid waste really needs to go to one facility. It doesn't make sense for them to go
yeah,
dump
No, they
half
can't.
and then turn around and
Well,
dump
they
half.
yep.
If everything's dumped in the same truck, they can't, right?
Yeah, I mean, they can open up a half of it, but it's just, obviously, it's too much lost time.
And MSW was a 5-year contract too, or was that?
I believe these are, yes.
You're talking
Waste management, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
'Cause
but they had a tonnage limitation and also the transportation to New Hampshire. They really didn't make as much sense as
Right, and
either
don't-
Casella or EcoMaine.
John, don't they also have a situation where they've got one landfill, but they might not have the other landfill or something like that?
That was Casella.
Yes.
Well, that's true for Casella.
That's-
I don't know
yes,
if that's true
Casella as
for
well.
waste. It might be.
Casella.
So, when we go to the automated system in this summer, the truck will come by, pick up the trash and the recycling, goes into one truck, and then that's Casella, but they will, if we're in this contract, they will take it to Portland. And then they have to come
Exactly.
back. This is just, I don't know this. So, when they come and pick my trash up, how many trucks are running around town on Thursday? Is it just one truck, one trash truck?
I believe it is. I believe it's one truck that's running one route. Yeah.
And they go fill up and then go to Wells and come back, or do they do it all in one trip around town?
That's a good question. I'd have to ask it depending, but I think they try to split up those routes. And I think in this particular circumstance, they're gonna wanna run one loop, one route and go. So that's why they were talking about possibly adding an additional truck
Okay.
or additional day. Because because of the
Well, because
hour
the
that they might
transport-
lose.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
if you could find that, that would be interesting to
Yeah.
find out, because they would lose time if they have to fill the truck up, drive to Portland, dump it, come back and finish the rest of the.
It's not
so that would
cost
be
effective for them to come back and do a second route. Yep.
Is, do we have any exposure with Casella in our current contract? If we go with Echo Maine and they still are transporting us? Like, for example, when could Casella increase the transportation fee on us? If we
Well-
go to Echo Maine?
Well, these are the estimates they provide us, so these numbers reflect what they've provided us for numbers. So it took a little while for them to get these numbers.
But that's for 50 years or 20 years?
10 years. It's for 10 years right now with an escalation clause on each year. The assumption is they would maintain the same, but, it's 10 years out. It's just letting you know.
So I'm sorry, John, it's 10 years with an escalation within the 10 years, or 10 years flat and then an escalation after?
No, it's each year. If you look at the spreadsheet, we're starting now at a 35,004, and then it escalates each year by a certain percentage, and that percentage I didn't put in as a variable, but it's in there. This spreadsheet's live. If you want to get it, you can play what if games with it. The top number, you can change percentages and all sorts of assumptions on what the CPI would be, et cetera. But again, they all use the same CPI.
Right.
Other than Casella. Casella has an 8% escalation, and EcoMaine has a 2.5% or the CPI. So Casella's escalation is considerably higher
So
if it's less than the CPI.
And just going back to the contract, so current Casella contract does include the processing and recyclables, but they will waive those if we will go with EcoMaine. That was a conversation we had with Casella.
Say that one more time.
So we just signed a contract with Casella, and that contract is, currently includes, the price in that contract includes the processing and recyclables for 5 years as the term of contract. But Casella said they would waive those fees if we will decide to go with EcoMaine. So that's the part that, I believe Lori talked to Casella, negotiated that part.
So we're under contract for the recycling component with Casella currently. And as Yanina was saying, is that they're willing to waive those tipping fees for the recycling if we were to go at EcoMaine. So we have a contract with them now. They're willing to forego the contract effectively for recycling if we were to go to EcoMaine.
Yeah, I just got a quick question on the recycling part. So when it's in one truck, does it all go into one area of the truck with recycling and solid waste, or is it separate, separate?
The two trucks are basically are split right down the middle.
Okay, so it's a separate,
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's a door that basically will go back and forth. When the
Okay.
recycling goes up, goes to one side of the truck, solid waste goes to the other side of the truck.
So I have a question. EcoMaine, I understand that in the summertime, sometimes they get overloaded and they can't burn everything and they have to transport to a dumping facility, a landfill. Is that would that cost us more money if they had to do that with our trash?
I don't believe that's correct, Al. I believe they're actually storing it. And then they go back and pull it out, which is rather an interesting thought, but, they're not taking it to a landfill. Rather, they're storing it and then using it in the low times.
Okay, but was that gonna cost us more to do that if they have to
No,
transport it
that's
twice?
normal operation. If they store it on site, my understanding is, it's just part of the operation.
Okay,
There's no extra cost.
all right.
do they burn in a power plant right now, John, or how do they?
Yeah,
incinerate?
it's trash to energy. That's the good part. I mean, again, the carbon footprint to have to go to Portland, it's more. There's no doubt about it. Our hauling is going to be a greater carbon footprint than if we went to Wells. The good news is, if we go to Wells, it just would have gone to a landfill. Now the trash is being burnt as fuel to generate electricity. So, there's a trade-off. Whether it's 1-to-1, I don't know, but at least there's an offset.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Any more questions?
For me, it's
Nina, do you have a
really the
question?
contract
Yeah.
side is the biggest thing, is what that's the buying into something.
Yeah,
is-
well, we're gonna
puts
see
a-
that.
Yeah.
Puts a whole nother dimension.
I
on
don't
this.
even think we haven't seen that part of it
No.
yet, but we're gonna.
Yeah, no, I think in theory, what you're proposing is best for the town. I just had those questions that I would just like to have.
Yeah, so I have a list of questions. As Eric said, we will go back, we'll have a meeting with all the parties involved, and then we'll bring back to the board in January, hopefully all the answers, or majority of the answers, and then that will help you to make a
And
decision.
because we need to make the decision by January 31st.
Correct.
So I have one more question for John. So let me understand this better. You're saying that EcoMaine does not use landfill whatsoever?
No, it does for the ash, certainly.
Right.
But my understanding is that the garbage is not to the trash, the waste. If there is more than they can burn, if there's more than what they need to fuel the plant, they store it. I believe it's on site. And then when they are lacking enough fuel, they go and recycle, they bring it out, which is kind of an interesting thought. And then they burn it when they need it. So that's my understanding from Lori's understanding of how this works.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, and
that's all good news.
And that's the big difference. So EcoMaine burns their trash, Casella uses landfill.
Right.
So if in 5 years, and they use a landfill in Maine, I believe, and in New Hampshire. So if in 5 years, state of Maine will decide to do something about landfills, that's a whole next level of questions
well,
in
that-
5 years.
We're going to all have to deal with that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's something to understand from EcoMaine, if we do the buy-in, what are they looking at in the 20 years? Are they looking at building a new power plant within 20 years, and that's shared across all the owners? That's just trying to, if we're gonna buy in, we have to understand what the 20-year capital outlays that they're looking at.
Yeah, we want to know what kind of capital reserve. Apparently, they are keeping a capital reserve, but you're right, the due diligence says, how much and what are the anticipated costs, yeah.
Right,
Of course, yep.
but yeah, so it sounds good. Again, too, just as a side note, nothing to do with our discussion, I think the reduction part of this discussion is interesting, too.
Yeah,
Here.
As it relates to your landfill concerns, there's a Brown and Caldwell report out there, if you'd like, I can share with you folks on that the state of Maine had contracted. And I can share that with you, that kind of talks about what we need and what kind of expansion is necessary for these landfills. I know it's kind of a separate issue, but it sounds like that's also a concern for you folks.
And an ash landfill, which Eco Maine is very different than a solid waste landfill, so that's also something to consider.
That's being expanded as well right now for Echo Maine.
Yep.
okay, any more questions? You have anything to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Other
Thanks,
business?
John.
Dave,
I have no other business.
other business?
No,
None?
somebody's got to get some lobsters off of the
Wow,
truck, so
wow.
I got none.
I have no other business. What about you, Nina?
I have no other business, just happy holidays to everyone.
Yep.
Okay, approve the December 27th, 2024 treasurer's warrant.
So moved.
Have first and second.
Second?
All in favor?
John?
Adjournment.
John said aye.
Oh, I have a first.
No, John said aye.
You have a first. I move that we adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
second. All in favor? Yay.
We're so
Yay.
confused when Sheila's not here. We don't know how to end the meeting.
Oh, boy.